Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's presentation on financing adaptation and cost of doing nothing. This presentation is a part of a series brought forward to the Coastal Climate Resilience Collaborative to support knowledge sharing and ideation for regional climate resilience. The project is funded by Natural Resources Canada's Climate Resilient Coastal Communities Program. Next slide. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining from Fredericton, New Brunswick, located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Wolastoq, Mi'kmaq, and Poscumushti people. I honor the deep and enduring connections these communities provide and have to this land, and offer my respect to the elders past and present. I'm grateful to live and work here, and remain committed to ongoing learning and relationship building. I also acknowledge that ICLEI Canada's work takes place across Turtle Island, the traditional territories of diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. We are committed to continuous learning and meaningful action in the spirit of reconciliation and to working in partnership with Indigenous communities wherever we operate. We're glad you could join us today. And this is a knowledge sharing session. So it is a two-way street for us to share any ideas. We have speakers for you, and we bring in topics that are relevant to our work. It's not just about listening; it's a two-way exchange. So you're free to encourage, like, share questions, share your own experiences, bring in discussions. And these sessions are meant to support and inspire the work we're doing together. And we look forward to learning with you through these sessions. And we have two great speakers with us today. We have Kaylyn Gervais from Green Municipal Fund and Adrián Tóth from ICLEI Canada. Today's presentation will give you a quick overview of two key topics: financing adaptation and ICLEI Canada's cost of doing nothing tool. So just to introduce our speakers, Kaylyn is an outreach officer working with Green Municipal Fund's Local Leadership for Climate Adaptation initiative. Kaylyn is an anthropologist with an MBA and has over a decade of experience working with funding agencies, helping communities remove barriers to their success in the fields of economic development, social change, and environmental programming. In her current role with GMF, she's enabling strategic planning and helping to develop projects that have immediate risk reduction potential in the community. Um, Kaylyn is based in Kootenays, BC, and brings her experiences supporting small rural and remote communities to the LLCA initiative. Um, so thanks, Kaylyn, for joining us. We're glad you could join us today. And next up, we have Adrián. Adrián Tóth is a climate change program lead with ICLEI Canada here. Adrián's work focuses on financing resilient infrastructure projects. He's also involved with Building Adaptive and Resilient Communities Program, or BARC, and helps with adoption of Cost of Doing Nothing Toolkit, which is a great resource to understand the risks of not acting on climate adaptation. The presentations will be followed by a short Q&A, and the meetings will be recorded and shared with you afterwards. Thanks for joining us, Adrián and Kaylyn. We're glad you could make some time today. Thank you. Moving on, so we'll get Adrián to share his presentation. Oh, sorry. We have Kaylyn first going with her presentation on the Green Municipal Fund Adaptation and Action Program.
Wonderful. Thank you for such a great introduction. And I'm very cognizant of time. So this is a program I could speak about for hours and days, and it's exciting across the board. But in 10 minutes, I will present what I can and leave some time for questions. This is a new opportunity at the Green Municipal Fund through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. It's deemed the Local Leadership in Climate Adaptation Program. Has a couple of streams, and we can get into the math a little bit there. But first, I will just see if, there we go. I can advance my own slides. Fabulous. IT on a Monday morning is always my favorite thing. This is the Green Municipal Fund. We've been around for a while. It's a fund of substantial opportunities. We just went through 2 years ago sort of a restructuring. So if anybody has worked with us in the past, we do have our core programs as per usual, and that includes all kinds of really fun things like building retrofits, affordable housing, waste to energy. Some of these titles may be new to some of you folks. It's sort of a shapeshift of where we've come from before. All of these initiatives are partially funded, partially financed. So we've been around for, I think, 25 years now with some of these versions. These are the new programs. They launched last year for the first time. So Local Leadership for Climate Adaptation. The numbers are down there on the bottom. It's a $530 million fund, and we're going to be operating until about 2030 in its current form. We also like to talk about growing Canada's community canopies here, because planting trees is very important, and they sort of tie hand in hand to adaptation. So similar timeline, 291 million in its form. The dates underneath were the expected launch dates for these programs this year. Growing Canada's community canopies is sort of more of a rolling intake. They have many more opportunities. Local Leadership for Climate Adaptation this year, one of its streams opened in July, early July, and we're hoping here the planning stream will come pretty quickly in the next couple of weeks. I like to think about LLCA as the umbrella term. That's the name of the initiative. There are a couple of streams underneath that header, two of which I think are important to talk about today. So the Climate Ready Plans and Processes piece is the strategic planning. We're looking at plans, processes in order to make decisions for what we can do on the ground. So that's that adaptation and action stream. So the first is really the strategy, the planning, the decision-making backbone. The second is what that actually means for the communities and what projects we can undertake. The intention is for the Climate Ready Plans and Processes piece that we do high-level asset management planning, multi-hazard risk assessments, for example, vulnerability assessments, capacity building, all of that stuff. If a community already has that high-level analysis, we can move to operational planning. So things like policies, procedures, budgets, templates, even engagement plans, communication plans, those types of things. But the intention of this fund really is to give communities that high-level overview where they are prioritizing multiple hazards within the community. This is the math behind that. Most communities that we work with are sort of under the 50,000 in terms of population. So there's the maximum grant amount for the plans and processes piece. If you're above 500,000 in terms of population, you are eligible for up to 140. And if you're somewhere in the middle, it's 105. The cost share math looks a little bit like this. So we have a baseline support of 60%. There are 4 opportunities for bump ups, 3 opportunities for like different cost shares. If your population varies, we can look at between 5 to 20%. If you're under 10,000, for example, in population, you are eligible for an extra 20%. That means our baseline is now 80, for example. And then these other 2 pieces are the equity and collaboration. These are a cornerstone for, FCM overall, actually, with this lens of equity, looking at projects that meaningfully address reconciliation, anti-racism, equity, and inclusion. Very important for us. So if we can see that in your application, that's a 15% bump up, which is amazing. Another 5% is if we see applications where multiple municipalities are applying in partnership, or we have an Indigenous community applying in partnership with the municipality, that's a bonus 5% because we love that regional approach if it makes sense for the project at the time. Cross-cutting themes, like I was mentioning, equity, reconciliation, collab, nature positive adaptation is a really interesting piece for looking at things like green infrastructure as opposed to gray infrastructure. Again, if it makes sense for your project proposal, those are things that we love to see, and they score highly on an evaluation of your project proposal. Under the Climate Ready Plans and Processes stream, these are types of projects that are eligible, and this is a really great place to start. Again, if you don't have that adaptation plan or that high-level risk assessment with multiple hazards, that's where we're going to start. But after that, we can look at any of these other pieces as they make sense to drive your momentum in the adaptation field. So we really do work with communities to figure out where they are and how we can support them on their journey. What I love about this program is that staff time is eligible, consulting time is eligible. I like to think about it like we're paying for the planning deliverable. How you want to get there is up to you. Some communities have capacity within their staff. Some communities need that extra support to come in from a consultant. So we work with you to find the best solution there. Eligible expenditures also include things like even software purchases, for example. So there's a lot of operational pieces in here that really sort of support communities where they're at. The process is a three-pronged approach with some supporting documentation. So this is again under the Climate Ready Plans and Processes, that first stream of this funding. Open right now is what we call the Climate Ready Communities, CCRC, assessment tool. This is the bulk of the application, and fundamentally it is it sort of establishes a baseline of where we are in the community. Some communities will have none of the tick boxes. They haven't started anything. Other communities will be well advanced in their journey. This assessment tool helps provide some insight as to where you're doing very well, where you could be doing a little bit better, and spits out at the end of it what we call activities. There's up to 5 activities, and those activities are again, they'll start with either you should do an adaptation plan or you should do a multi-level risk hazard assessment. Then there will be other pieces. Oops, sorry about that little team things. Then there'll be other examples of activities that come out. From here, you're literally going to copy and paste those activities into the application form and into the workbook. So this assessment tool is the heavy lift. It is the assessment of where you are. Then we're going to tell the story of the work we want to do through the application form itself, and then we're going to tie some numbers through the workbook. So we've got the evaluation, the storytelling, and then the how are we going to do this with the numbers associated. That takes us to the adaptation and action opportunity. So once we have that eligibility tick mark about the decision-making backbone, the strategic planning, that opens adaptation and action. This is the doing of the things part of the program. So we have both feasibility study support and implementation projects. The feasibility studies here are intended to look at something that would be eligible under our implementation projects stream. So we have a cap of $1 million as a project cost. And that's largely because we were sort of created to fit that niche between nothing and the DMAF funding when it was available, or if it should become available again. The intention is that our projects fill that little gap within the $1 million cap. So in terms of adaptation, that can go pretty quickly. And we often look at projects that are phased or pilots or a component of a larger system. But that is where we sort of sit there. So the numbers around the feasibility study are about the same, up to a maximum of $70,000 or 80% of eligible costs. So it's sort of a whatever comes first situation. If your feasibility study is more than 70,000, that will be our cap. If it's less, it will be doing up to 80% of those eligible costs. A little nod again to our Growing Canada's Community Canopies program, where every municipality is eligible for up to $10 million of tree planting projects. The cost share under GCCC is 50%, 10% of which can be, 10% of any project can be sort of infrastructure costs associated. So if we're digging up pavement or if we need to plant irrigation systems, for example, those are all a component. A very interesting option is to submit what we call a joint application. So if you want to plant some trees, but you're not going to meet the minimum requirement of $50,000 as a minimum grant, we can look at it under the LLCA initiative. So there's lots of overlap here. We're sort of matrix teams working on these programs together. And the intention, of course, is to get to putting trees in the ground. So we love putting trees where people are living. And here's the math like I was mentioning before. Now, outside of that, this is my contact information. So there are a number of us doing this role of outreach. You can book through our website. You can email us directly. You can use those phone numbers down there on the bottom, and we will help you to figure out where you are, where you need to go, and what programs you would be eligible for under our LLCA initiative. I think that might have been more than 10 minutes, but I tried.
That was 11. It was great.
Yeah.
11. Okay, good, good. I didn't touch so much on the AIA, but just so we know, it is sort of most communities are at the planning component. And then if we want to get into the implementation stuff, I'm happy to talk about that.
I'm happy to say that I think the regional collaborative that we're within, we're ticking that check marks of being in the planning, being complete. So we're interested in the AIA. And thanks for sharing your contact. I think that we will kind of continue shaping our application a little bit, and we'll be in touch with FCM about, making sure we have all the details in place before going through the kind of pre-approval and the application process in its full form. I'm wondering if you can be our contact or if we should just go through the advisor contacts.
Yep, I'm happy to do so. That's great. I will drop my email in the chat here.
Perfect.
And then, yeah, thank you for recognizing that the AIA stream is a little bit more sort of specific. So when we get into the details of it, we can sort of brainstorm where you're going to go, how you're going to go there. But yes, I'm happy to continue that conversation with you.
Yeah, I appreciate the hands-on support that is available by FCM. So thank you. And Nicola, if you're okay with it, we might just hold questions for this one and go to Adrian's presentation just in lieu of timing.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. Adrian, I'll get you to share your screen.
And any questions for Kaylyn that is either to any of the programs that she spoke with, we can capture them in the chat and circle back with her via email. And for sure, we will have other touch points. Thank you so much, Kaylyn, for joining. You're welcome to stay on and listen in, or you're welcome to hop off if you have other things to attend to.
Thank you for the opportunity. I will just drop the website in the chat, and the application guide is available. So as you scroll through, it's a big guide, lots of information. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Kaylyn, for the great presentation, and Inez and Nikita for inviting me as well, and great to see some familiar faces as well. Hi, Lisa. I'll kick off. So my name is Adrian. I'm part of the adaptation team here at ICLEI Canada, and I'm leading our adaptation finance related projects. So today I'll be talking about two of our toolboxes. One of them is the CODN, or Cost of Doing Nothing toolbox. This tool was developed back in 2020, so already 5 years of experience developing with many communities and municipalities reports and part of the toolbox. And the second project, the Financing Resilient Infrastructure project, which I'll dive into in a second. So a little bit of background. We all know that climate change is costing municipalities billions in direct and indirect financial costs. If you talk about direct costs, those are more immediate and tangible, thinking here around increased repair and replacement costs of hard infrastructure after a flooding event, or increased operations and maintenance costs due to increased wear and tear. Of course, direct costs lead to indirect costs, which are less immediate and less tangible financial impacts, so related to increased municipal service disruptions or supply chain disruptions due to damaged infrastructure, loss of personal possession, for example. And the third pillar, social costs. These are more long-term and really intangible impacts. Thinking here after a huge flooding event, when communities are displaced, what are some of the mental health impacts, human health impacts, but also due to higher food prices, some of the malnutrition, malnourishment elements of the costs of climate change. In 2024, for the first time in Canadian history, insured damage caused by severe weather events surpassed more than 8.5 billion. And 8 of the top 10 costliest natural disasters have occurred over the past decade. The 2024 total is nearly triple the total incurred losses recorded in 2023. And most often, costing estimates focus on insured losses. But what about the uninsured losses as well? So in this toolbox, in our research process, we found that these social and ecological costs were not always considered, especially in economic analysis, most especially the loss of ecosystem services, for example. We also found that the consideration of widening the knowledge system to Indigenous and local knowledge within the process of assessment of climate change costs lacking, especially across the national and subnational resources. So national and subnational data is time sensitive and will change as new information becomes available. They also vary by source and depend on the focus, for example, economic, insured losses, damages. Although this costing data is key to understanding large trends and scale, therefore local data is critical as it can support national figures with on-the-ground real-time reporting from municipalities. Some of the challenges that municipalities are facing when implementing adaptation are how to build that business case for adaptation and accessing funds for adaptation. We know that accessing funds is time-consuming, convoluted, and more often can be unsuccessful as well. And there is therefore a growing need for municipalities to assess the costs of doing nothing locally. So in the past 5 years, over dozens of municipalities have completed their cost of doing nothing reports, and we are currently working with a cohort of 9 additional municipalities. We've developed this toolbox to support other municipalities in creating their own cost of doing nothing reports. And my colleagues will be popping the link to these resources in the chat. They're freely available, and I'll walk you through in a minute what the toolbox contains, which are 4 key documents, 2 summary appendices, and 2 case studies from the city of Windsor and Hamilton. Our aim for the toolbox is to help municipalities weigh the costs of action versus inaction, support the adaptation planning process using data municipalities have available right now, and ultimately create their own cost of doing nothing reports to support any call to action. A few words about the methodology. The starting place for developing the resources was to identify key risks facing municipalities across Canada and define impact statements. On the right side, you see 8 selected national impact statements, we call them. And these are the frameworks around which the cost of doing nothing template was designed. The selection of these 8 impact statements was guided by local expertise and was intended to be representative across a range of sectors, geographies, across all the provinces, scale, and climate hazards. Guidance within the primer, instructions, and template documents was informed by this research and our experience working with municipalities and our case study work with Windsor and Hamilton, and since 2020, another dozen of municipalities. So who should use it? The toolbox was designed to be used by municipal staff in communities that have already completed or are in the midst of completing a climate adaptation plan. The development of a cost of doing nothing report is meant to supplement the planning process by highlighting the value of the value proposition for adaptation. This means to assess costs of inaction does require you to have an understanding of your local climate data, impacts, and risks. So let me dive into the toolbox. First, resource is the primer document, and it sets the foundation and overall context for assessing the cost of doing nothing at the municipal level. It defines what costs and impacts look like at the local level, and it identifies the 8 national impact statements used in the cost of doing nothing municipal template. The municipal template was designed to help remove barriers for municipalities as they develop their own cost of doing nothing reports. The template is a Word document that can be easily customized, and it includes pre-populated and editable content, along with notes and recommendations how to fill it in. And to support you in on this journey to filling it in, there's a handy instructions document that goes with it. And the goal of this resource is to ensure you have everything you need to effectively use the template. As municipalities begin to make their own cost assessments, we have also developed this tracking tool, which is an Excel-based spreadsheet. And The goal of this document is to suggest potential sources of climate variables, costs, and impact data, and provides guidance on how best to attain and track the collection of this data. We all know that data collection can be lengthy, and here we especially emphasize the collaboration between the different departments, from finance to parks to sustainability teams within your communities. And lastly, we have the toolbox includes 4 additional supporting resources. We have provided 2 case study reports from the City of Windsor and the City of Hamilton. These case studies can provide inspiration for municipalities when developing their own reports. And we have also provided 2 appendices, which include summary tables on national, subnational, and local data sources. All right, so you made your cost of doing nothing report. Now, what should you do with it? There's multiple use case considerations we thought of, which are really anything that is a call to action that galvanizes support or builds the business case for action. Some of the examples could be submitted as a standalone report to council, or it can go along with an adaptation plan submitted to council. It could also be a backgrounder to new councils or an update to external or internal stakeholders. A couple of words on final closing words on this toolkit, key considerations and recommendations. Collaboration is key. I already mentioned that there's a number of actors that ideally are involved with the development of this report. It will be important to identify early on which departments and staff, Indigenous knowledge keepers, and external stakeholders will be involved to identify necessary communication pathways and relationship management considerations. Give yourself time. We often recommend about 3 to 6 weeks for the data collection piece. And then another maybe 2 to 3 months for completing the full report. Prioritize feasible data. We know that sometimes data is not available or it's scattered, and it takes time for different departments to come back. So really, we recommend allocating at least 4 to 6 weeks for this piece and focusing on progress. There's already a lot of information that is available out there from national and subnational sources. And of course, the more local level data you include in the report, the stronger the report will be. So that's very quickly around the cost of doing nothing report. I will continue to the next report as well. So feel free to keep your questions or note them down, and we can come back to them in a minute. I'll just skip to a few slides here. The second resource I wanted to talk to you about is indeed the Getting Ready to Finance Toolkit, which comes from a project back in 2023. 10 Canadian municipalities worked in partnership with ICLEI Canada and cooperators on the Financing Resilient Infrastructure Project, or short FRIP, to identify a suite of possible resilient infrastructure projects that private investors could help finance. A core component of FRIP was to connect municipal practitioners with financial experts from both the private and public sector. A couple of words about why financing resilient infrastructure. Some of the learnings from working on this project was for us to show that resiliency thinking needs to be incorporated into all aspects of municipal planning and growth. And this is one mechanism to do that through infrastructure. The risks are clear and our communities need resilient infrastructure. We know this is a crucial topic for Canadian municipalities and preparing for the impacts of climate change. But often the challenge is it must be both sustainable and financially viable, and that's where innovative financing comes in. To build resiliency at the local level, we need new and innovative financing approaches. Such approaches need to include mechanisms that can be used to acquire structure, govern, and allocate financial resources towards resilient infrastructure. In addition, financial resources must come from a variety of sources, including financial institutions, private investors, and institutional investors to support and complement traditional sources of public funding. A couple of numbers from the FRIP project, so 10 participating municipalities, 18 climate hazards addressed through the projects, 22 possible case study examples were prepared, 6 infrastructure types identified, and 4 resources developed, which I'm going to dive into in a second. On the next slide, you see the map of the 10 municipalities from east to west that participated in this project. And they covered 6 project types, so ranging from flood resilience to wildfire resilience, resilient development, water and wastewater system resilience, and others. Covering a few of the climate hazards, or all of these are covered actually through the project's case studies. So let me dive into the toolkit and some of the main resources that they contain. So first are the examples of resilient infrastructure projects. These are 21 examples of existing projects from the 10 municipalities. It's a collection of a short case stories of projects that are organized by the hazards that they address. And it's meant to give ideas and showcase the types of projects that came through the FRIP projects. I have to mention that these resources are available both in French and English. And we'll pop the link in the chat as well, where you can have a look at these 21 examples. The next step as you go through the toolkit is the project preparation template. It's an Excel spreadsheet, again, where you can identify multiple projects that address the hazards that your community is facing. So in the Excel spreadsheet, there's a lot of drop-down menus and fields to fill in. And it's meant to support the process of generating infrastructure project ideas. So again, we emphasize here group work as it was key for this project. And if you decide as well to fill in this resource, the idea was to bring together folks from public works departments, finance, sustainability, to parks to generate ideas together. And the last sheet in this resource is a prioritization exercise so that one could get from 10, 15, 20 project ideas to a shorter list of projects that could be carried forward into the next resource. And you will see how each of these are complementary resources. So imagine here you've identified 10, 15 projects, narrowed it down to, let's say, 5 key projects. Once you have that prioritization done, the next resource is the project preparation template. And it helps think through what are the things I need to understand about this project to really be able to get this project resourced, financed, or funded. Now, I also know Ina's also mentioned, and Nikita as well, that the collaborative is working on a grant funding database and an information sheet. So I will spend a bit more time on this resource as it might be useful for your upcoming work as well. So with the project preparation template, we wanted to design this resource so that the information in it will help municipalities pursue private financing if that was something that you were interested in, or to be able to help prepare applications into traditional sources of public funding. So whether that's through the Green Municipal Fund, we just heard, through Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, Infrastructure Canada, or through Public Safety Canada. This template was created by looking at all the major funding applications that exist nationally and across many of the provinces, and say what are the questions that are common to all of these applications, and can we create guidance on how to answer some of these questions. So if you wanted to get a project funded or financed by completing this template, would give you the way a majority of information you might need in order to submit that to a funder or to open a conversation around private investment into your project. And finally, the fourth piece is a project preparation template instruction. So this document goes hand in hand in conjunction with the previous one. This is all the details you will need in order to complete the template. And to quote our managing director, Eva, when talking about this resource informally, she referred to it as a passport application. I'm sure many of you have completed one where you have the passport application, the first 2 pages, and then there's 6, 7, 8 instructions on how exactly you should fill it out. So imagine these two being open simultaneously. You would have to open them on a screen simultaneously and look at question number 5. In fact, why don't we do that? I think we have a couple of more minutes. I'm just going to do a quick demo here to bring it a little bit closer. So I mentioned you open the project preparation template on the left side of the screen and then the instructions on the right. All the questions in the template are the kind of key information from all the major funding sources. So let's say question number 5, beneficiaries. You scroll down on the right side. The instructions describe who will benefit from the project. In this case, it can be municipality, local and regional government, indigenous recipients, public sector, etc. Or maybe another example, question number 14 and 15 related to natural hazards and extreme weather events. Please indicate the natural hazard extreme weather events that are going to be addressed by the project. On the right side, you see some examples. So it really gives you that kind of walk through the main questions. And there's about 30 questions. And the goal here really with this resource is to set you up for any applications. We know that there's new funding sources and applications coming out very soon. And so hopefully you can look at some of these examples. If I walk through some of the examples from the communities, 21 project examples, you can then use the Excel file ideation resource to come up with your own project ideas. Use the prioritization template to shorten down the long list to, let's say, 3 to 5 projects. And then use the project preparation template and the instructions to create completed project files, 3 to 5 projects you might want to pursue resourcing in your community.
Thanks, Adrián. Thank you. That was great. I'm sure both the resources will be helpful to the collaborative going forward.
Yeah, we are super happy to share the slides, and I'm sure the recording will be shared as well. So happy to take any questions or dive a little bit deeper. I'm not sure how much time we have.
We have time. We can take questions. So if people have questions, they can raise their hands or speak or type in the chat. Okay. Okay. We have a few questions here.
Raf has a question, Nikita. He's got his hands up.
Yeah, go ahead, Raf. I don't think we can hear you.
Is better. Nice.
Yeah, you're good.
Perfect. On the cost of climate tool, what's the feasibility of incorporating additional climate impact statements for things like drought or coastal flooding?
Right. Yeah, the tool is actually pretty flexible. Drought is one of them. Sea level rise, wildfires also. There's an opportunity to incorporate those, and we do have additional. I mentioned the Excel spreadsheet for data collection piece. And sometime next year, I don't know exactly at the month, or we have a ongoing project currently, where we hope to update the cost of doing nothing toolbox with these additional impact statements as well. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Because I mentioned there's a lot of pre-populated data for the other impacts. Okay, sweet.
yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, I have a few questions here, so I'll just ask Adrián. Adrián, what is the staff time commitment for developing a CODN report, including data collection and writing?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends on how in-depth one would like to go. We typically recommend between 4 to 6 weeks for the data collection. Working with the communities and municipalities, we see that one project manager would reach out to their colleagues and different departments to collect that data. It's very helpful to have one centralized collection piece. We usually use Dropbox or SharePoint. And we also have kind of pre-populated email templates that could go out to colleagues to kind of help with that process. And then typically a report could be, depending on busy timing and availability, between 3 to 4 or 5 months to then the writing piece fully completed. So I would say a total of 5 months.
Okay, sounds good.
Or less. Yeah.
And what do you think is similarly for the project ideation template for FRIP?
Right. So for the FRIP project, it's pretty much similar. We know that, at first we knew that collecting all the information, and we know from applications, from funding applications, that it takes a long time. So 3 to 4 or 5 days is not really enough to kind of finish it up. But it is feasible. And we know that new funding sources will be coming in. We heard from FCM as well. And having those projects ready in terms of when the applications come out will really set you apart and be ready once those applications are out there to send in your applications. And oftentimes the deadlines are very sharp and short deadlines to submit the application. So going through the process in advance is super helpful.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just another question here. Can you tell us a bit more about the beneficiaries identified as part of the FRIP project?
Yeah, that's a great question. And indeed, we had indirect and direct beneficiaries from these resilient infrastructure projects. The direct beneficiaries are the people who are living around the area of the infrastructure project. That's pretty straightforward. But for example, if we take stormwater retention pond as an example, the roads that are around the area, identifying who is using those roads, who is protected by this resilience infrastructure investment, which businesses benefit from more protection. So really thinking through those direct and indirect beneficiaries will prepare you to have a stronger business case for financing the infrastructure project, be it private or public funding. Or one of the things we saw is the reallocation of municipal funding, even internally, if needed, or third-party public funding.
Yeah, thanks, Adrián. Inez has a question. Go ahead, Inez.
No, super useful. Thank you for the additional details. And I think that these templates will really help us with the step that we're going into for the putting funding applications together. I just wanted to use this time to put into the chat and to just give it a little bit of context that, as Adrián mentioned in his comments throughout his presentation, that we are putting a we've put like a table together of different funding sources that may be applicable to the measures and the kind of projects that we're looking at. And we also have capability for you to add additional funding sources, like it's come up in some comments. We've always documented those, but if there's more, I'm just putting the links to that table that's available to you, the one that's like 55 different funding sources that we've identified so far, and kind of tracking these types of details a little bit against it, as well as the form that you can suggest additional funding sources that you would think that may be applicable to our project to keep an eye on. So I just wanted to put those forward, and in our small group meetings where we go to kind of dive in deeper, I think that we will use the resource that Adrián just mentioned as a kind of a template to start capturing the details that we anticipate many of the funding applications would benefit from. So that's really great to connect about that. Thank you, Adrián, for your presentation and for sharing that.
Thanks, Inez. I think we have a question in the chat for Adrián. Do you have some examples of private funding?
Yeah, thanks. Great question, Marina. Indeed, let me share. So if you go into the links that was shared earlier, so this is the resource that contains those 21 case examples where we worked with cooperators together to identify some of the possible sources of cash flows, and for insurance companies, that's one of the important metrics when investing in resiliency projects, or what of the return on investment. That is also very much broken down, how to calculate the return on investment. So feel free to scroll through these examples here, ranging from flood resilient architecture and building engineering to integrated drainage, stormwater management plan, low impact development. So we listed a couple of examples there.
Yeah. Thanks, Adrián. The links to these documents are in the chat. They're on our website. So if you scroll the finance toolkit page, there are all the resources that Adrián talked about. Thanks, Adrián. That was really helpful.
Thanks, everyone, and nice to meet all of you.
Thanks so much.